Hi everyone, my name is Freya Graff. I'm a yoni mapping therapist and holistic sex coach with 8 years of experience in this industry, and I got a question in my DMs this week that I felt the need to make a little video about because someone was asking me, one, the difference between self-pleasuring and masturbation, and two, their follow-up question was, but how does it affect my sex life, whether I self-pleasure or masturbate, and how I touch myself? I can't really see how that would actually influence or impact how I have sex and what kind of a lover I am. Because my argument through all of my experience, through talking to so many clients, through all my research, is that yes, how you touch yourself does have an impact on how you are in the bedroom with a partner or a lover. So I just wanted to go into this a little bit and explain, first of all, the difference between self-pleasuring and masturbation, and then how this actually influences your sex life. So basically, the way I think of masturbation is it's your stock standard, wham bam, thank you ma'am, way of rubbing one out, basically. There's nothing particularly honoring or reverent or intentional about it, and I'm not saying this from a place of judgment or that there's anything wrong with this. This is how most of us touch ourselves, and this is how we've kind of learnt to engage with our sexuality when we're solo pleasuring. It's very goal oriented, it's very aimed at getting an orgasm as quickly and efficiently as possible, having a wank, having a maz, rubbing the clit really intensely and quickly, maybe very gripping the penis really hard and wanking really fast with quite a lot of friction. And it's generally for the purpose of release. So it's because we want to get to sleep. It's because we want to release some of this toey kind of horny energy that's building up. It's because we have maybe a porn addiction, or there's this compulsion that we need to have a wank or masturbate to get a result, to have an orgasm. And again, nothing wrong with this, but if you think about it, the way that we're touching ourselves, it's friction-based, it's goal-oriented, it's trying to be quite quick and efficient, because maybe when we were young, we learned how to masturbate through this kind of lens of shame, stigma, taboo. Sex is dirty, touching yourself's dirty, masturbation's naughty and shameful. We were nervous about getting caught in the act or someone walking in, like our parents. Maybe that did happen to us and they told us off and said it was dirty or gross to touch ourselves. So we've kind of trained ourselves to have a quick, cheeky little rub and tug session and get it done quickly and out of the way so that we can go back to our life or go to sleep or just kind of get on with our day and be like, okay, cool, that was me in my horny sort of sexual space. I did the thing, I got it done. Now I can kind of disconnect from my genitals and my sexual energy and sexual identity and just go back to being the me, the respectable kind of me out in the world. And there's this massive disconnect that we all have, or not all of us, but most of us, that's been culturally or societally conditioned into us to be quite disconnected from our genitals, quite disconnected from our bodies in general, but definitely from our sex centers and from our sexual expression and identity. We sort of compartmentalize these things, and because we were brought up, whether it was explicitly told this or whether we just took on, these beliefs through the undercurrent of, kind of shame and judgment in our society, we mostly kind of learned to see masturbation as a little bit shameful or a little bit dirty or private, that we don't talk about, we don't admit that we do it, we get it done. And maybe men will admit that they do it more than women, and it's definitely getting better and more out in the open nowadays. But as a general rule, this is how people feel about sex. It's behind closed doors. Masturbation is something we do privately, we don't talk about it, and we kind of get it over and done with and we move on because we just want to get that orgasm and the release and the result. Whereas with self-pleasuring, the approach there is a little bit more mindful, a little bit more intentional. It is, rather than to get a release and go for the goal of having an orgasm, it's more to top ourselves up and nourish ourselves and explore ourselves and sort of meander through, you know, discovering and creating new pleasure pathways and new kind of ways of engaging with our sensual energy, with our sexual energy, with our pleasure anatomy, our bodies, and learning more about ourselves as we go, learning to master ourselves and our arousal processes. It could involve a more slow, kind of gentle approach where we're focusing on more subtle sensations. It's not goal oriented, so we're not pedestalizing orgasm as this be all and end all sign that it was a successful session and being disappointed if we don't come. We're just enjoying giving ourselves loving touch, exploring pleasure, finding ways that we can honor and worship our body through self-love and self-care practices. So it doesn't even have to involve genital touch or orgasm necessarily. You know, it can be breast massage. It could be other things that help you get into your body and engage in your senses and your sensuality. It could be dancing in a really sensual kind of sexy way and playing with your sexual identity and energy without necessarily having to go and have an orgasm or engage with your genitals. And then when we are engaging with our genitals, it's more intentional. It's got a bit of ceremony to it, a little bit more sort of sacredness. And you don't have to go super woo-woo, but it's just treating our bodies how we would like to be treated by a lover, because we usually touch ourselves in this really quick, fast, friction-based way. You know, for women, it's straight on the clit, maybe a vibrator. For men, it's gripping really hard and fast and having a wank, and it's friction based, it's in and out, it's, you know, it's quite mechanical. Whereas I suppose with self-pleasuring, there's a little bit more of an energetic component and an emotional component. It's not just to try to get a result and squeeze a gas out of our genitals. It's to explore, it's to love, you know, give a lot of sort of loving energy and be like compassionate and patient with our body. And it's to involve all of our senses and touch ourselves in a way that we would feel really respected and honored if someone else was touching us in that way. So giving ourselves the respect and the treatment that we would love to expect from a partner. And because we're doing that with ourselves, we're setting a precedent for how we want to be treated in the bedroom by someone else, and we are setting this standard. We're raising our expectations and our standards. We're raising the bar. We're showing our body how it should be treated. We're starting to discover lots of like different, more like diverse pathways to pleasure. We're creating new neural pathways to pleasure through touching ourselves in different ways rather than going the same route every single time. Because that's the other thing, is when we masturbate, we generally do the exact same thing every time. We go straight for the clit or grab the cock. We are going quite hard and fast. We're trying to reach orgasm quickly and efficiently, and we do it pretty much the exact same way every time, with, you know, a vibrator on the clitoris or rubbing with maybe porn. And we can generally get a pretty reliable result that way, sure. But then what's happening is we're treading that same pathway to pleasure and orgasm every single time. We're furrowing that neural pathway more deeply every time, and the other pathways to pleasure, like maybe the nipples and breasts, or maybe internal penetration, or maybe for a penis, like more subtle, sort of slower movements that aren't so friction based and firm. We're sort of letting those neural pathways and those pleasure pathways fall at the wayside and start to become less well used. And so it's a bit of a use it or lose it situation. So what winds up happening is when we're masturbating all the time, instead of sometimes mixing it up with a bit of self-pleasure and intentional touch and doing different things that removes orgasm as being the goal, we're actually winding up teaching or conditioning our bodies to respond the same way to the same stimulus every time, and not to respond to other stimulus. So for a guy, you might wind up in the bedroom premature ejaculating a lot, because every time you have a Maz, you're having a quick wank, you're watching porn, you're having that really intense stimuli, and you're jizzing quite quickly. Because why would you spend ages languishing and self-pleasuring when you could just have a quick wank and get the orgasm, right? But what ends up happening is in the bedroom, our dick and our brain, the association there now is like, oh, this feels good, I'm going to come straight away, because we're orgasming so quickly when we're masturbating that becomes the norm and the cycle that your body sort of follows. And then on the flip side of that, sometimes people with penises will have more difficulty keeping an erection and orgasming with a partner because it's not as intense as they're used to with their own firm grip and maybe some really intense porn. The level of intense stimuli and like intense sensation that their body and brain are used to can't be replicated in the bedroom with a partner who might be doing all this other lovely stuff, but it's not going to get the same result. And so your erections just kind of keep disappearing because you've only trod that one pathway to pleasure. And so that neural pathway is really strong, but the others aren't. And then with vulva owners, what can happen is we become really reliant on a vibrator or on quite fast friction-based clitoral stimulation, and we know that that gets us there. But then in the bedroom, something more subtle like maybe a tongue or maybe some nipple sucking or penetration with a finger or a penis, that's not going to do it for us. Our vagina has totally lost the ability or never learnt the ability to feel pleasure from those things because it hasn't created the pleasure pathways / neural pathways. It's only getting off the same way every time with this quite hard and fast wham bam thank you ma'am clitoral focused approach. And so you're setting this precedent with your own body by how you touch yourself. It's being reflected in how your body responds in the bedroom, which makes total sense because it's more or less a conditioning thing. Like if you're doing the same thing every time and it's getting that result, that's what you can expect. You're not going to expect, oh, all of a sudden someone's putting a finger inside me, or they're, you know, being really like gentle and taking their time, and your body and brain don't know what to do with that because it's not used to that, and those pleasure pathways haven't been developed or created. So, and this is all just like rule of thumb. Obviously, this may not apply or feel that relevant to some of you, but this is generally how I like to differentiate between self-pleasuring and masturbation. Masturbation, you know, it's goal-driven, it's mechanical, it's usually to get a release, and it's quite depleting. And often people, like a lot of clients will tell me, and it doesn't matter what gender, they'll tell me they feel depleted and a bit of emptiness and maybe a bit of a shame hangover, or maybe just a bit like, oh, I feel like I just used myself when they masturbate, and they go for that goal of orgasm and it's quick and it's over, and then they feel a little bit like, oh. Whereas in self-pleasuring, you can actually draw out the session, you can take longer, you can mix it up, get creative. It's more about nourishing and filling you up, topping up your cup, expanding your pleasure capacity and your pleasure pathways, you know, just broadening your horizons for arousal and pleasure altogether. And with a penis, you can edge, you know, you can actually draw out the sessions so that you can last longer, you can bring yourself to be quite aroused and erect, and then let it plateau for a while and simmer down, and then bring yourself back up to peak arousal again, and just do that a few times to sort of stretch out the session and train your body and brain to last longer. And if you're edging and you're maybe not ejaculating every time you self-pleasure, you're breaking that cycle, you're creating different circuits, and in the bedroom, that will have a really amazing impact because your pleasure pathways will be diversified. You'll be able to last longer because you've been practicing that in your own time with yourself. And with a vulva, same deal. You can edge, you can bring yourself close to orgasm with the clit and then diversify it with other things. There's a lot of ways that you can touch yourself that engages the parasympathetic nervous system first, allowing your erectile tissue to engorge, therefore allowing internal pleasure to be possible. Because if we're going for gold every time with the clitoris, we're bypassing all of our arousal processes that involve internal orgasm and engorge your erectile tissue. So that's a whole nother topic, and I go really deeply into that in my online course, Queen Out. I've got a mini course on my website called Power Up Your Pussy Pleasure Potential. I've got a few offerings on my website that go more deeply into this, so I'll put some links and I'd love you to check that out. But just reframing how you think of masturbation and maybe adding a little bit more self-pleasuring in, creating a solo practice that is for self-care and self-love and honoring your body, and starting to set the bar with yourself for how you want to be treated and how you want to be touched. And therefore, that's going to influence and impact what kind of a lover you are when you find yourself between the sheets with someone else. So if this resonates with you, comment, let me know, shoot me any questions. I'd love to have you in my course. There's a whole couple of modules on how to, for people with vaginas, for how to self-pleasure like a total queen and to create new pleasure pathways, to learn how to orgasm internally, vaginally rather than just clitorally. There's so much in there. It's your roadmap to epic orgasms and pleasure. So check out that link below, and please subscribe if you like this kind of content, because I love making videos, and if you send me in questions, then I'm really happy to answer them and maybe even create a video about it. Thanks, guys.